This weekend, Ishana Night Shyamalan, M. Night Shyamalan's daughter's debut picture, The Watchers, drops in theaters. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Let me know what's your excitement level for The Watchers, and if you've seen it, what did you think about it? As for me, this is one I was very curious about because M. Night Shyamalan, her father, the director's father, has made a number of movies which have meant a great deal to me, but also his career has been very uneven, to say the least. And so I was just curious of what she would be able to bring to the table, how similar would she be, how different would she be, all of that fun stuff. Likewise, she actually came to Austin to do a press junket, so I was able to sit down with her and interview her about the film last Friday. I'll share a couple clips of that in this review, but you can also just check out the full review right up here wherever that button is at. With that said, let's get started. And right off the bat, the movie does a good job of building intrigue. There's a series of mysteries introduced at the beginning of the film, and as you move throughout the film, as you get answers to one mystery, it always introduces a new one, so you kind of keep getting kind of sucked in with these questions that you want answers to. During the Q&A after the film, she sort of talked about this, how because her father's name has so much kind of weight to it, people have expectations for any film with his name attached to it, even if it's from a different person. And she talked about how she wanted a film that kind of had this high concept, like so many of his films, that has some mystery surrounding it, but also wanted to take it in other directions. And so kind of using the exterior as a way to meet the genre expectations that people would have for the film and for her, but also making it so that the further you went in, that it would take you in different places. And somewhat to that point, it's a bit of a genre blender where, superficially speaking, it's very clearly in this horror thriller genre, but you kind of keep going further and further in, and you kind of discover different things, and the genre shifts, and there's all these other elements that kind of go along with that. Now, that was kind of the exact thing that drew her to this project. And so with this film, one of the things I really enjoyed about it is how on the surface, it's this horror thriller, but the deeper you dive in, suddenly it's fantasy, and then Irish lore is blended in there. What made you to decide to adapt a book that is kind of this genre blender as your directorial debut?
I mean, I think it was exactly that. I think I enjoy those particular genres and all of the kind of rich mythology and world building around it. But I thought it was such a cool choice that the author made to kind of start out as this really accessible, kind of tense thriller to take you into an unexpected, larger world. And so that felt really, really compelling and smart to me, that it was like coming from a very grounded place and then moves to a much more surreal place. Okay.
It's almost like that's the wrapper, and then there's that sweet core to it, is all the rich lore that you get to explore with him.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, this film reminded me of the TV show Lost, or at least the good aspects of Lost, where it was the show that was able to kind of introduce all these strange images and rules and bunkers and lore that just raise questions, and you just want to keep going deeper and deeper in to discover everything that's going on, and it pulls a bunch of different influences together in that process. Other thing that's really good about this film is that she has a great eye. There's a bunch of just the basic cinematography here where they went on location to shoot in these Irish forests, and a lot of the film pulls from Irish lore, and so they wanted it to be as true to that as is possible. So you're on location in these forests, and then just the nature of the themes, ideas being explored about the lead character and her perception of herself lend itself to a bunch of symbolism. So there's all of this imagery in the film that's just kind of cool to look at and visualizes the ideas being explored. So with Dakota Fanning's character, so much of it, she's wrestling with how she sees herself.
Yeah.
And then the movie's filled with this imagery of seeing reflections of herself and broken reflections of herself. How much of that imagery and symbolism was in the book, and how much of that was added in adapting to a visual medium?
I mean, I think that was somewhat embedded in the high concept of the movie, where there is this, of the book, sorry, where there's this like large window that becomes a mirror. And it felt like it was very deftly addressing that thing of that this story was about a character kind of learning to face themselves and learning to see the darker parts of themselves and be okay with that. And then obviously as a filmmaker, I just kind of wanted to go harder with that idea. And so it very much became about picking images that had this kind of like duality in it, so that you're constantly reminded of the two sides of Mina's self, and that she's kind of confronting that.
When you kind of combined all these elements together with this sense of mystery being built, shooting on location in a forest, great cinematography, all this symbolism, it just has a nice atmosphere to it where you feel like you're in this creepy environment and it kind of sucks you in a little bit. So that's really where I think this movie is strong. But when you start moving into some other areas, there are quite a few issues here, so let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. The first thing that comes to mind here is that when you're doing a story like this that's building all this intrigue about these creatures in this forest, you're blending genres together, inherently your reveal is going to probably be a bit of a swing. And I think inherent to that, some people are going to love the genre blending and some people are going to roll their eyes at the genre blending. The big reveals will be some people's favorite thing about it. Other people will just be like, oh, another wacky Shyamalan twist from a different family member. Right along those exact same lines, I think there is a sense in which this movie probably has some unrealistic expectations put on its shoulders because of her last name. That you see his last name. He didn't direct the film, he did produce it, but immediately you have expectations. You have preconceived notions that you wouldn't have going in to watch a different director's debut film. And so, as best as possible that you can go in not watching it as a Shyamalan film, but as just a horror thriller from a debut director, that will probably help your experience. From there, let's move on to the bad. And right off the bat, as a horror thriller, it's pretty slow and it's light on tension. You don't feel the stakes and the danger. Like, you know, in the one sense that the people trapped in this forest are in danger. There's a couple things that indicate that, but in the actual runtime of the adventure that they're on, with the way that it plays out, you don't feel that danger enough. And so for a thriller, there's not really enough thrills to it. As a horror film, there's not enough scares, kills, any of the things that you really want to kind of make that impact. Other really big problem here is that there's a lot of lapses in the logic, where you're watching it and it gives you an answer to something and you immediately go, wait, how is this built? Wait, what's going on in the woods? How is that happening? And kind of the more you dive into it, the more you learn, you just have to suspend more disbelief. It raises the wrong types of questions in your mind. The movie kind of just forces you to just accept things and move on because the logic, it doesn't fit together. And if you're really invested in the characters and the journey that they're on, generally speaking, it's much easier to just kind of move on because you care so much about that character. And if the tension is there, the stakes are there, and you really want this person to survive and escape for that character's motivations, you can move past the logic. But, as previously mentioned, there's not enough tension. There aren't enough stakes. And the characters are pretty dull. They're fairly basic. Fanning's character does get a backstory that we kind of understand some stuff kind of going on with her, and much of the imagery, symbolism in the film is all based entirely around her character. But even to that point, there's not a lot of depth to her character emotionally, where she gets trapped in this forest, in this strange room with odd people and there's creatures there. And even her reaction to it seems very muted, considering the insane thing happening to her. And so it just felt very like flat characters without much to them. So when you kind of try to pull together all the pieces for this movie, there's some ideas that are really cool and interesting that blends together some genres. The imagery's really cool, but the actual writing itself, the characters, the building of tension and stakes throughout the runtime isn't there. So when you pull all of those different pieces together, you've got a movie with interesting ideas, some cool genre blending, great cinematography, symbolism, but where the writing, the characters, they're just not as strong. It's very much a mixed bag of a film. There are things to appreciate here. It doesn't fully work on the whole. Overall, it's a C+ on the entertainment scale, a 6 out of 10. This is a movie you can probably watch to stream it if you're curious to check it out. It's not one you need to rush out and buy a movie ticket for. Be sure to check out my interview with the director right over there. You can check out my M. Night Shyamalan ranking right down there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.